upbringing, lack of self-esteem. So we have seen an increase in, I think one of the reasons we had a 10% increase in our crime rate over the last 2 years. We've gone from about 6,600 cases up to 7,400 cases
That's
in
just
the 2 years.
during the recession.
During the recession time period, and I think that's a direct result of the economic times we're in. People aren't employed, they're committing crime. We've actually also had an increase in white-collar crime, people stealing from their employers, things like that. So yes, I think it's a great question, and I think you do. I never think that you can get away from, you just isolate crime and say, I think you have to look at the factors as to why crime increases, and I think certainly the economic situation in the country has something to do with it.
I think that, the question is that, well, thank you, caller.
Okay.
Did that answer the question for you? Okay, great.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, send me a stamped envelope. I got some nice gifts for you.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, of course, I'm always concerned about the way we treat drugs, as you know, and it's unfortunate that we're doing it this way, in my opinion, because all we do is encourage more of it. And I like the idea of your drug court, which makes it a little bit for first-time offenders. But tell me something: do they get felonized anyway? Do they have a felony?
Well, it really depends upon what they're charged with. A lower level felony, a class E or D felony, if they're a first-time offender, no, we will send them in, and they will have to plead up front to the felony. And I sort of hold this stick over their head indicating that if they aren't successful, then the felony would stand and they'll be convicted on that felony. However, if they are successful, they'll be able to withdraw their plea and they'll get a reduction down to a misdemeanor.
Okay, yeah, because one of the problems, according to the pundits I read, with the system right now is they are felonized, most of them, which means they can no longer get a job. They're cut out of almost all state, federal, and local jobs with that felony, and most corporations won't hire them, so they have no real employment available, so they have to go back to crime.
I think it's a real problem, and I agree with you. I think it's a real problem in our society, not that people shouldn't be held responsible for committing crimes, because they should in some way, but at the same time, I've never been one to advocate creating a criminal. I don't think it's my job to create a criminal. I think that if I can put someone back into society as a productive member of society, that's ultimately one of our goals as being prosecutors. I say that, with a caveat. There are certain crimes out there that you just can't tolerate. Crimes of violence, crimes against children. Those people deserve to be prosecuted and get the criminal conviction. What's interesting is New York State just this year passed another revision of the drug sentencing laws, and it's taken a lot of the ability of discretion in my office to channel these people into drug courts away from me, and now it's going to be almost an automatic referral. And one could say that that's a good thing because more people will avail themselves of the program. I personally believe that it's a bad result because now
you lose your stick.
Well,
amongst other things,
but not only that, you'll have multiple time offenders, people with convictions, prior convictions, automatically being allowed to enter the program. And I think that's sort of like giving the keys to the candy store to the kids. I just think you're going to find that you're going to get some people involved in it that really are in the end bad for the drug treatment programs. They've almost gone.
You're going to have alumni.
That's right. It's almost gone so far that you'd almost advocate and say, well, you might as well just do away with it and just, make it legal and let it be handled by the healthcare field as compared to trying to make it criminal, because it takes so much.
Maybe it's an end run around the drug laws in terms of detoxification of the drug laws, whatever.
I would like to. I mean, if that was the point, I mean, I could almost understand that, but then take it. And not that I'm advocating that, because I'm not. I don't know whether or not it's the best thing in the world to do or not, because I think then if you legalize it, maybe more people will try it, and you'll end up with more people being addicted. But I think that New York State is doing it in order to reduce their state prison population. And if that's the reason, I don't think that the the reasons justify it necessarily.
Well, we have of course, we just increased the size of our slammer to the tune of over $1 million a sell, which is killing us up here in Chautauqua County, but what can you do? You have the law. You got to put them in the slammer, and what do you do with them? You pile them up like cordwood, I guess.
I mean, if you talk to the sheriff, I think a lot of it comes down because we're one of the states that's controlled by the Department of Corrections. New York State mandates these things on local county jails, and you look out like the sheriff out in Arizona who sets up the boot camp, and you know there's no state agency that tells him how he needs to run it, and so a lot of the expense I think comes from mandates from New York State. But you know that permeates a lot of what goes on in Chautauqua County and every county in New York State.
Mandates.
Unfunded mandates. I mean that's why our property taxes are
You got to
so
do
high.
this, but we're not going to give you the money for it.
But we're not going to fund it for you.
Well, I suggested to the sheriff, Joe, that if he'd just give me $1 million of the $25 million, he said it wouldn't be that much, but I knew darn well it did finally come down to that. I would build a big Howard Johnson's, and we put, you know, the barbed wire and the steel, the razor
Wire around it?
and we'd have 3 or 4 vicious dogs running around it. And I could probably pack 500 people in there easily. Put bars on the windows and lock on the door.
Would it
you
include
need one guy to walk around, you know?
Would it include room service?
Oh, I'm not sure they'd get that. But it sure as hell would take care of things. They wouldn't have to live in tents. We could heat them, and they could have a little luncheonette in there and everything, you know? Little Murphy kitchen. Oh, we got a couple of calls. Here I'm blowing my own tube. Good morning, caller. Thank you for waiting.
Good morning, Reed. How are you?
Yeah, fine. What's up here?
Oh, I'm doing fine. I have a question for your guest about crime in television. I was just wondering, specifically, has the increased violence in television in some of the movies like Saw and I guess the entire sequels that go with that, and just an increased amount, have you seen an increased amount of crime because of that? And
you blame TV for it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, to a certain degree, I do. I was speaking to someone the other day about this, and was indicating to them when I was young and growing up on Lake Erie, we had I think 6 television stations that we got. 2 of them were out of Canada, and we had an antenna, and we really weren't watching much television.
We didn't even have one until 55.
So, and I think nowadays you have kids and you have just tons and tons of channels. You have kids can access it and watch it, and being a father of an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old, I know how difficult it can be to try and prevent them from being exposed to these sorts of things because you know you can't watch them 24/7, and they're going to access the televisions. I think that you do see, particularly with young people, an increase in violence. I note that. Case in Florida where those 4 or 5 boys doused that other boy with
that's just horrible.
a flammable liquid and lit him on
Unthinkable.
fire. It's
Unthinkable.
Just, when I was 13 or 14 years old, it just would never have crossed my mind to do something like that. And you have kids out there committing these sorts of acts.
If they did it up in our community, the folks would have gotten together and taken them out back and shot them like a rat, all 5 of them.
At one day, certainly, that would have happened that way. I mean, but you see these things, and I think kids, based upon seeing these things in a graphic nature on television, feel as though that type of action is all right, and it's okay. So yeah, I do believe that there is an increase in violence in young people.
Okay.
Right. And then one other question is about basically prevention. How does technology increase this? Because I know there's parental controls now in your computer. There's I see Ford's rolling out some parental controls where you set a maximum amount of speed that your child can go, how loud the radio can go. How do you see technology as affecting crime?
Well, I mean, as far as the youth goes, I think that, and it makes it a little bit more difficult because even now I have an 11-year-old son, and his ability to be technical is even beyond mine at this point, his ability to use the computer. But I think what it requires is parents to be diligent and mindful, and I know, at least with my own children, and I can only really speak about that, is to be quite candid with them and be loving and caring. I mean, a lot of these things, I think, result from the breakdown of families, and you have an awful lot of families out there with single parents, and that makes that task even more difficult. But
virtually impossible to monitor.
It can be very hard to monitor your children.
Does your children have a TV in the family room or in their own room?
We have, in the family room, we do not allow televisions in their own
I mean, I'm
rooms.
talking about the computer, really.
Computer, we have a centralized location for the computer.
So they don't
so
have
that
their own, they can't sneak off and go online and do some sex.